Welcome, truth seekers, to the Truth Unfiltered. I'm your host, the Rep, and you're tuned in to the place where the veils are lifted, the shadows are exposed, and the mysteries of the Bible come to light. This is Podcast Nation, and tonight we dive deep into the hidden truths of Satan's little season, the millennial kingdom, and the enigma that is Revelation 20. For those joining us for the first time, welcome to the fold. Here on Truth Unfiltered, we tackle the questions many don't dare to ask. We explore the profound mysteries that lie within the Word, peeling back the layers of Scripture to uncover God's truth, unfiltered and unapologetic. Now, if you've been with us all week, you know we've been on a journey, breaking down Revelation 20 and diving into the millennia of prophecy, purpose, and power. Tonight we wrap up this series by finishing our review of chapter 20. What lies in those final verses? What can we learn about the culmination of Satan's little season and the ultimate triumph of God's kingdom? Get your Bibles ready, your hearts open, and your minds prepared, because it's time to shine the light of truth on the unseen. You won't want to miss what's coming. I'm the Rev, and this is a Truth Unfiltered. Let's dig in. You know, it always feels better when I pull it off the dome. Welcome, guys and girls, ladies. We have, let's pull this up. Tonight, we're going to go ahead and pick up where we left off last, with Satan's little timeline over here with as we're breaking down this chapter 20. And I'm breaking this video down because it's an hour and 40 minutes long. It's a documentary. It's a well thought out video. The individual that made this film did such a good job that he covered so many different things, and I'm not even sure he knows how many different things he covered. As I said before, we can break down each segment and each picture bit by bit if we wanted to. But we're going to kind of move through this thing. Otherwise, we'll be lost in it for the next year or so. And we don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull this up and make me a little bit smaller.
Kingdom had profound alterations in their bodies and minds given by the Holy Spirit, which today would probably be interpreted as superpowers. For example, they would have a halo around their crown chakra through biophotons.
These biophotons he's talking about, it's this godlike energy. That's the best way to explain it. I mean, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but it's what happens to these individuals when their bodies became glorified. They weren't like you and me. It's why it's hard to put ourselves in their shoes, to think how they would think, because we know in our heart of hearts it's not likely that it's possible for the majority of us to just become a saint today or tomorrow. I mean, we're not going to experience that until we do. We won't remember this life anyways, as far as I understand. But regardless of that, that's what he's talking about there. I know I jump right on into this because that's how my brain works. But at the same time, I wanted to say this too. Thank you guys for the ones that have been here with me in this journey. The ones that have entertained my thoughts and ideas and have sat through and listened to the things I've had to say. It does mean a lot to me whenever people interact with me. So if you want to talk in the comments, leave your ideas or throw something at me or correct me if you think I'm wrong, then by all means leave it in the comment section, and I will respond to it. I don't know when I'm going to respond to it, but I'm going to respond to it, and I'm sure you'll know when that time comes. That being said, it has been oh my God, I don't know how to really explain it or to express it. I was just talking a moment ago, and it feels like there's something going on in society, especially in the world around us right now. I think everybody feels this thing where it feels kind of like something's off, and you just know something is up, but at the same time, you've been given a little bit more freedom. It's interesting how we can talk about the little season, the deceptions that are going on within the institutions, within our government and whatnot. And while we're able to talk about these things now, we're not necessarily getting as censored as we normally would. It's an odd and eerie thing to think about. Anyways, I just wanted to say thank you guys for being here, and let's continue on with this breakdown.
Ever wondered why holy people are depicted with a shining head or halo? In all cultures and religions? This has to do with so-called biophotons. When neurons are active, they emit measurable amounts of photons that even leave the skull. Since the amount of biophotons in rats, for example, is much lower than in humans, one could conclude that the level of biophotons is a marker for consciousness. And enlightened people with a higher level of consciousness and a fully activated energy system literally are emitting light.
I look forward to those days. Being able to think more clear.
They would have the ability of levitation, like the Franciscan Joseph of Cupertino in the early 17th century.
Telepathy. I don't know if you could trust me with it.
This is fairly unknown among Christians, but there are many accounts of saints who, according to several intellectual witnesses, mastered the ability of levitation. Most of them lived an ascetic lifestyle. Francis of Assisi, the founder of the Franciscan order, was also able to.
By the way, you can look all these things up, and that's why he's showing you all this. He's saying that, hey, I've looked into this. I've looked into these things. I've learned a thing or two, and here's what I found. And that's all. That's what this is. If you want to screenshot that and go check those out, you can verify what he's talking about. Oh, wrong one. Where are we at?
Francis of Assisi, the founder of the Franciscan order, was also able to fly.
Connor.
And that was just one of several miracles. He also had stigmata that he received at the end of a 40-day fast. Stigmata, in Catholicism, are bodily wounds, scars, and pain which supernaturally appear in locations corresponding to the crucifixion wounds of Jesus Christ: the hands, wrists, feet, near the heart, the head, from the crown of thorns, and back, from carrying the cross and scourging. The Spanish-born Catholic mystic Teresa of Avila was also able to levitate 1 meter above the ground, and she also received the stigmata in a religious ecstasy in an encounter with Jesus. In another mystical apparition, angels.
I find it interesting because trying to date this millennial kingdom, when exactly did it start? I mean, when you think about it, King Jesus and Queen Mary Magdalene. King Jesus? Didn't the 3 wise men come to see the king, the baby that was born? Doesn't a king have to have a kingdom in order to be a king? It's almost like his millennial reign began then. But at the same time, you could start it at 70 AD. Either way, I think it's the signs that you're looking for, not these dates.
In another mystical apparition, angels appeared to her and shot an arrow of light into her heart, setting it ablaze. These are real energetic processes in our energy body, and all Christians should strive for being born again through fire. But as I said, a topic for another time.
He's gonna go over that one in his other video. Over the heart stuff. It's the scary stuff for most Christians, especially those that have been raised in the traditional
Catherine of Siena
churches.
was another saint from Italy who could levitate during prayer, even as a child. She also received the stigmatization from Jesus. And a priest claimed to have seen the Holy Communion wafer fly from his hand directly into Catherine's hand. So she also possessed the ability of telekinesis.
It's possible.
And in a kind of mystical wedding, she and Jesus exchanged
also
hearts.
possible that some
Once
of these
again,
things were
this is the
distorted,
activation of the Christ spark in the heart chakra. I will likely talk about the saints again in future projects, but my point is, faithful people of the Millennium Kingdom, that were blessed by the Holy Spirit, through prayer, celibacy and fasting, could amplify the toroidal field of their energy body so much, that some
they teach about these periods as if you were out there, they were out there, dying of the Black Plague, and you had your Christians running around killing everybody, forcing them to be Christians. It wasn't necessarily that way, though. Whether or not people were being killed or bad things were happening, you have to assume at this point that everything they're telling you is the opposite of the truth. So if you look into these things and it says, oh yeah, these, 1,000 people died of this or that reason or whatever reason, you look a little bit further and look at the things the people said, not just what the narrator is saying. And when you see what they said, it kind of makes it make a little bit more sense. That's the point I was trying to make in my Genesis series when I was explaining that when it says in Genesis that and Adam and Eve slept together, or they came to know each other, or they laid together, and then it says in like a semicolon, Eve says, I have begotten a son from the Lord. And you have to listen to what these people are telling you, is all I'm saying. Breaking this Bible down and understanding what what these videos are about that these people have made. Learning how to read and research without being distressed or thrown off by what you're seeing because the words don't make sense. That's the whole point of this whole thing that we're doing here. I'm not the only one with answers. I'm not the only one with questions either. That's why I'll enjoy watching everyone else's content. I like participating in the community because you can share your thoughts and your ideas, and I think the worst thing that could happen to you is someone blocks you or removes you from their chat or Discord or something. It's not the end of the world, but it usually never leads to that point, and that's what I appreciate about it the most. They offer a safe space. That's what this community does, and that's what I enjoy about it. For those that have a hard time expressing their ideas or their thoughts, saying what's on their mind, trying to interact with the world around them with the confusion of thought on how to proceed forward, I don't know. I feel like this community helps me. At least it has so far.
Fasting, could amplify the toroidal field of their energy body so much that some developed the ability to levitate. Give them a broom and you get the picture of a witch. They also had other abilities. The ability of telekinesis, the ability to heal by laying hands, or the ability of prophecy, which many Catholic mystics of the time had, and yes, also the ability of physical regeneration. I think that's what was meant by eternal life. The strengthening of the body's own energy system by the Holy Spirit could actually cause eternal life, so extremely slow aging and supernatural wound healing powers in some righteous living people, especially if they lived an ascetic lifestyle. This small spark in the hearts of people today was once a great flame in the Millennium Kingdom. These saints, not all of whom were with Jesus on Mount Zion at the North Pole, would be the greatest enemies in Satan's little season. I am convinced that there were also people who made contact with demons, such as the Nephilim spirits, or Satan himself, through incantation rituals. And there were some people who used their energetic powers for selfish and sinful purposes. This may have increased with the beginning of Satan's little time, when he tried to gain more human helpers for his cause, which is the rebellion against God. In the Middle Ages, witchcraft was defined as an alliance between a person and the devil that would undermine and threaten the Christian foundation of society. If someone was accused of witchcraft in the Middle Ages, it was only in the context of heresy. Since Jesus had already defeated the forces of evil, belief in the existence of witchcraft was actually considered heresy.
I believed if I lived
the person
in a
was
little
brought
house
before
on
a
the
church
prairie,
court, and, contrary to popular belief,
wouldn't have time
was
to
punished
draw
mildly in the
Satan
vast
and
majority of cases. The aim
wicked
was repentance
priests and
and
stuff.
rehabilitation of the soul, and in most cases they only received short prison sentences. Torture and executions were relatively rare, yet this distorted image of the bloodthirsty Middle Ages is perpetuated by pop culture, and above all to drag the Millennium Kingdom and Christianity as a whole into the mud. Overall, the data on witch hunts in the Middle Ages is very thin, but we know there weren't any witch hunts at all in the early Middle Ages. And the few towards the end were no comparison in quantity and cruelty to the extent of the persecutions in the 16th and 17th centuries in Satan's little time. In 866 AD, Pope Nicholas I banned torture and instead demanded a vow of truth by laying hands on the Bible, something that is still used in courts today. In 1080 AD it was even forbidden to condemn witches to death. It was only when Heinrich Kramer published the Malleus Maleficarum, also known as the Witch's Hammer, in 1486 that the wind changed. Just before the Renaissance. Mocked as a senile madman in his hometown of Innsbruck, he managed to convince Pope Innocent VIII of his views on witchcraft. The book only gained popularity in the 16th century, which lasted well into the 17th century, and was republished dozens of times. It shaped the period of witch hunts, as he provided the basics of how to recognize witches and how to kill them. I may come back to it in the future. Many Christians today believe the Bible would condemn any form of powers as witchcraft, but there are many ambiguities here. There are several references to witchcraft in the Bible that strongly condemn such practices. For example, Deuteronomy 18 verses 11 to 12 condemns anyone who quote casts spells or is a medium or spiritist or consults the dead. Anyone who does such things is an abomination to the Lord, and the Lord your God will drive out these nations from before you. Quote end. Which makes sense, because it opens one up for deception by the Nephilim spirits, who can disguise themselves as dead relatives or angels, for example. And in Exodus 22 verse 18 it says, "You shall not suffer a witch to live." It has also been suggested that the word witch in the Hebrew original could be a mistranslation of poisoner. On August 25, 1538, Martin Luther joined a table talk, where there was much discussion about witches and sorceresses who poisoned chicken eggs in the nests, or poisoned milk and butter. Luther quotes himself in his book Luther's Small Catechism. "One should show no mercy to these women. I would burn them myself, for we read in the law that the priests were the ones to begin."
Sorry about that.
Quotes himself in his book Luther's Small Catechism. "One should show no mercy to these women. I would burn them myself, For we read in the law that the priests were the ones to begin the stoning of criminals. Luther's view of practitioners of magic as quasi-demons was at odds with the Catholic view that emphasized choice and repentance. But how can one kill such holy and quasi-supernatural people who possess regenerative abilities? Creative methods of murder and torture were devised until it was finally realized that beheading or burning at the stake were the only effective methods of killing a person with cellular regenerative powers. Just as the Romans did with the apostles.
Welcome, Tyler. Welcome. Man, it's so good to see you. So good to see you. It does feel good, like I said, when you have people you care about participate in the things that you care about, you know. I was just talking good about this community and how supportive everyone is, how we kind of look out for each other, and I like that about it. I like that everyone offers a safe space. I can go to Leaving Babylon's page and say what I want to say, and she's pleasant. It's just the way it is. I love this community. Welcome, Tyler. Welcome to the show. Glad to see you, man.
In the first century. The San Marno altarpiece in Florence, in my opinion, reveals the basis behind the ideas of the Malleus Maleficarum and what the witch hunts were looking out for. Here the two saints Cosmas and Damian are executed, but it doesn't work out intended. The fire is thrown back by their powerful Taurus field.
So this is pretty interesting. I feel like it's odd, but I feel like people, the way I see it, but I know how it comes across, but I feel like that this has been an ability that people have been able to do for a while. And not all people obviously can do it. It's the ones like Abraham and Daniel. Most of you know about Daniel. Not many of you know about Abraham. And we're going to get to that. We're going to go over Jasher next week. Next week, I want everybody to understand what really happened before the flood and right after. There was a division of the people, and in order to understand that and to know who we are and where we come from, you gotta understand all these divisions and where they led and how they split off. Sometimes these divisions end up right back where they began and left from and divided from to begin with. You have to kind of be careful when you're looking into those type of things is all I'm trying to say. But next week we're going to go over Jasher, and it's going to be a pretty good series. I feel like it's one of my favorite books. I enjoy reading it just to read it. So reading it with you guys and going over it with you guys and showing you what I understood from it and why it's an adult version of the Bible that we have. I think you guys will like that. Anyhow, I'm not saying that these guys, that this is like a super ability or power. I think that this comes from a level of faith. And once you achieve the level of faith that these individuals have, this fire can't hurt you. It can't touch you. And that's what Daniel and Abraham had. And we'll get to that as we continue our Bible study series. But before we press on with the King James version that everybody loves and is used to, we're going to take it up a notch and we're going to go through Jasher.
When they try to drown them, they float to the top. And they survive the stoning and crucifixion without a problem. In the end, only beheading kills them. Interestingly, the official justification for the burnings is that burnt corpses can no longer be resurrected for the day of Armageddon. All of this is, of course, rejected by modern historians, and the witch hunts are dismissed as nothing more than ignorant mass hysteria. But on the whole, there was indeed an extermination of people with supernatural abilities behind it. Just not in the way we were told. The interpretation that the witch hunts were merely an expression of male misogyny, as claimed by some feminists in the 1970s, is also simply wrong. Historical documents prove that witchcraft accusations were primarily made by other women, and in Finland, Iceland, Estonia and Russia, it was mainly men who were the victims of the witch hunts. Of course, many innocent people were also defamed and executed. And this hysteria was intentional and part of another problem reaction solution strategy by Lucifer and his henchmen. What had
Let's see. Let me get a drink here. How the problem reaction solution paradigm works. He's got on here, number one, the government creates or exploits a problem, then attributes blame to others. What he's showing you here are things that you're already familiar with, or at least you should be by this point in your life. The government creates or exploits a problem and then attributes that blame to others. So like basically the government creates a reason for you to be worried and upset, and then whenever you wonder who is the fault for this worry and being upset, you now look at whoever they tell you, basically. So like if Kingdom Within is the threat, I'm gonna say, hey, I'm gonna say something bad, and then whenever you ask me why I'm doing this, I'm pointing fingers at Kingdom Within. I mean, it's your fault over there, you know. That's basically all that is. But we see that today within our own government structure. It's just it happens daily. It happened with our president. It's happened with the last president. It happened with the one before that. It's happened within your local jurisdictions. It happens everywhere. The government creates these problems that exist around you. Get rid of that government, and you get rid of most of your problems. Yeah, that's right. Man, I should have got my water, but I don't want to get up now. I might have to get up in a moment. The populace reacts by asking the government for protection and help to solve the problem. That's you. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We call the government. Well, get the government out here. The government will take care of it. That's what that is. It's designed that way, though. The government offers the solution that was planned by them long before the crisis occurred. They had already told you most of the time. By the time something happens, basically, you've already been told what the solution is to the whatever problem it is. You're going to have to go lay down, boy. Over there. All right. Big guy, come on now. I have this big old dog here. He thinks I'm on the phone. He wants to get all in my face every time I'm talking to somebody. He doesn't like sharing my attention. He thinks I'm on the phone, though, because I'm talking to nobody, I guess. So the government offers the solution. Basically what happens is you'll see this in like cartoons and stuff like The Simpsons. You'll see it in The Simpsons, or you'll see it in things like, I don't know, like movies and books and cartoons mainly is like, that's their popular one, the most popular way to do this now, where the government offers you a solution that was planned by them long before the crisis occurred. So you already are in your mind prepared for it when it happens. Oh, I have oh my goodness. Let's see if what I can do here. Where is my... I'm gonna bring... Oh, there it is. I'm just gonna turn that off for a second. Come here, boy. Oh. This big wad of meat right here is Jacob. And he's my buddy. And he just likes to lick. He wants to lick you if you're here. It doesn't matter who you are. Unless you're not supposed to be here, and then somehow he just knows you're not supposed to be here. Oh my goodness. God. Oh. My girl. Come here. Come here. Oh. This is my girl. That's my girl. Now she is in love with me. This is my girl, and she likes to like lay on like up on my head on whenever I go to bed. So she kind of she's not as big as my boy though, but she kind of tough. All right, cool. All right, come on. No, y'all go lay down. All right, let's get back to the program. That was for you, Tyler, so you could see my pups. That was Jacob and Callie. I call her Callie because she was like a destroyer whenever she was little or younger. She would destroy everything. I had to train her and teach her and spend a lot of time with her. There we go. Let me cut that curtain off. It's not a curtain or a screen or whatever that thing is back there. Like I said, this isn't about me anyway, so let me make me smaller. All right. Yeah, so the government offers the solutions that was planned by them long before the crisis occurred. I mean, most people are not new to this. I mean, you see it all the time. It's just you don't talk about it when you go to work and you spend 8 hours of your day at work or more. And then by the time you get home, you don't talk about it again because you got to get the kids ready for bed. You got to fix dinner and do homework and Bible study if you get a chance to do it. You know, you have a life to live. Most people don't have time to worry about all this. So the hope is that whoever you're voting for is going to best serve you. It's always been an interesting thing to me to try to figure out why people like to seem to like to, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it right now. I guess it'll come to me when it does. So I guess it's time to move on to the next part right here. Rights and liberties are exchanged for the illusion of protection and help. And now this is the thing, though. We all know this. No one's confused about this. Our government definitely is our rights and liberties are definitely being taken away little bit by little bit. But the thing is, they never give them back to you. Y'all know that, though. You understand that once the government takes something from you, it does not give it back, not without a cost. you might get it back, but you're going to pay for it, and you're going to follow these rules in order to get it. Oh, I don't know. I guess it just confuses me why there's so much faith in the government, especially when there's parties, groups of people that may not be in favor of you. Just doesn't seem logical to me.
Previously been a belief that some people possessed supernatural abilities, which were sometimes used to protect the people, now became a sign of a pact between the people with supernatural abilities and the devil. To justify the killings, some Christians of the time and their proxy secular institutions deemed witchcraft as being associated to wild satanic ritual parties in which there was naked dancing and cannibalistic infanticide. Again, the energy of the Pluto-Aquarius constellation of revealing the buried and hidden shadows of society is manifesting here. And with that comes the exposing of the blood-drinking Satanists. It created a generalized fear of people with powers, caused a lot of unnecessary suffering and trauma, only to then, in the age of enlightenment, free humanity from the excesses of this superstition through science. But behind this body's own energy system is only a science that has not been understood. Or rather,
like he said, it's a science that hasn't been understood, if you want to call it a science. I don't look at it as a science, although when I was learning this stuff originally, I was learning it from an atheistic perspective. I think being an atheist gave me the courage to look into the things that the Bible might not have necessarily shared, or at least it doesn't share it in a clear manner that I could understand at the time. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that, you know, I'm looking into this stuff and it kind of makes sense to me, but I don't understand where it could begin from. Like, where would its origin be? Like, what's the source of this? And as you dig deeper, looking for these sources, looking for the root cause of what happened that led to whatever outcome exists, it always leads you back to the Bible. And it's interesting how everything does that. I strayed away from it, but my search brought me back to it. It's amazing.
The ruling bloodlines have ensured that it is never understood by people and that these forces are forever relegated to the realm of myth.
Oh, yeah, dang. Y'all need to hear what he said. Let me rewind that.
Superstition through science. But behind this body's own energy system is only a science that has not been understood. Or rather, the ruling bloodlines have ensured that it is never understood by people and
the ruling bloodlines. So this is the thing that's comical once you break it all the way down to its very root. You know, I had a crisis of identity, so to speak, you could say. Who am I? Where did I come from? Why was I adopted? Why this? Why that? Where did this begin? How far back does it go? What's the source? Well, who can I point the finger at, and who can I lay blame to? I think that's the route I took at one point. Eventually you learn, if you just kind of let these words tell you, then it all just kind of makes sense. I'm going to destroy that fella's mindset on race and the people of the Bible. There's a lot of discourse going on. I guess it's discord, to be technical about it. A lot of discord going on about who is who. It's not about who is who, it's about when. And that's the whole point of all of this, is figuring out when we are. Once you figure that out, the who is who doesn't matter anymore. It just becomes comical. A thing not worth worrying about is all I'm trying to say.
And that these forces are forever relegated to the realm of myth and pseudoscience, so that these powers are only accessible to the ruling bloodlines. In the first half,
Yeah, like I think I just totally avoided that point. I saw two doors, opened up one of them, and just forgot about the other one. But these ruling bloodlines, they go back. I don't know how far back they go, to be honest. I know they go back into the millennial kingdom, like they were, like their line that began before the end of the millennial kingdom, but they may not necessarily have been. They were like, it's like they were born into it. They weren't necessarily resurrected and saintly. They were just regular people, is all that is. And and they were like survivors, or the survivors. Their job as survivors, the reason God spared them was to allow them to educate the resurrected dead as they come back to reality and figure out what's going on. A lot of these people decided once they got together that they would be better off keeping this information to themselves, and thus created these families. And we're going to go over a book that I have over here, but look, it's a really incredible book. I know a lot of you that follow this channel and know me personally probably already know a little bit about this book, but it's called the Monster of Jekyll Hyde. I mean, not Jekyll Hyde, Jekyll Island, the Monster of Jekyll Island. And it's about the families of the men who so-called built America. And those are the remnants of these individuals, is what he's talking about here.
Half of the 18th century, torture was gradually banned. The Witchcraft Act of 1735 put an end to the traditional form of witchcraft as a legal offense in Britain. In Austria, Maria Theresa outlawed witch burning and torture in 1768. 16th century, biblical cosmology, which had great similarities with the cosmologies of all ancient.
Notice he's saying cosmology. When I talk about the seasons and the stars, and I don't know if I want to go down that hole again, but we might do that. But once I start talking about the stars, or again, for any purpose related to any discussion in the future, and I'm not talking about cosmology, I'm talking about astronomy. I'm talking about placement in time. Like that's all I'm talking about. It's all I'm referring to.
Ancient peoples was gradually replaced by a new, atheistic, heliocentric.
It is a odd coincidence, though. No matter what major culture you look into, historically, they all had the same view of what the earth was. I always thought that was interesting, and just that we were just smarter than they were. We have to be. But no matter how much you look into it and read, none of it makes sense, really. But when you start looking at it from their perspective, it makes perfect sense. What makes even more perfect sense is whenever you see these buildings or you see these giant tree stumps. It's pretty amazing when you see what's really out there in the world around you. It's hopeful. It's hopeful seeing it, because you see that and you can go, that's for me one day, but unfiltered and unaltered.
Model. The work of various astronomers of the time played a key role here. Nicholas Copernicus and his De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium, as well as the astronomic works and inventions of Tycho Brahe, Johannes Kepler, and Galileo Galilei. This period between 1543 and 1687 is also known as the Scientific Revolution and is regarded as the link between the Renaissance and the later Age of Enlightenment. During this time, great progress was made in the fields of physics.
I'll back that up.
Enlightenment. During this time,
I wonder if we can find that on Google Docs. I'm going to pull this out here where I can see it side by side. I'm going to pull this over. I haven't read this book. Where am I? All right, I want to find this book. What is it? I spell observation. It's so weird because they write their F's and like they're like an S. It's kind of like talking with a lisp. The old 1611's a hard book to read, man. Trying to read that thing. My son keeps his with him all the time, though. It's amazing. I'm not sure I typed enough information here. I'm gonna look this up later and read this. I'm interested to see what
great
that says.
Progress was made in the fields of physics, astronomy, chemistry, and biology. They basically
like
took the
English.
true cosmology and reverse engineered into the exact opposite through mathematics, or more appropriately, mathmagic. During this time, the 4 island sections and the 4 rivers at the North Pole, the Garden of Eden, and the...
Okay, yeah, so essentially, this is what I think our world would have looked like before the flood. It would have looked similar to this, but I think there would have been a lot less water than that, a lot more land. And it was more or less full in these 4 quadrants right here. What is going on?
On that rabbit hole.
Oh, man.
Century contained influences from Gnosticism, Neoplatonism, Western esotericism, and Eastern revolutions could build ahead with revived the classical Roman law of antiquity, 1,000 use of the Gregorian calendar. This helped located there, or garden of, during this mathematic.
All right. Yeah, so, oh man, it doesn't want to.
The 4 island sections and the 4 rivers at the North Pole,
Anyways,
the Garden of Eden, and the magnetic mountain, Rupi's Niagara, located there, were also removed from the world maps.
But you see it different now because it's all broken up. It's in pieces. It's been kind of like, the pieces kind of like moved away and stuff. Like where Pangea
is the basis on which all other Luciferian agendas are built. By hiding creation, the Creator himself is called into question. When the Creator is called into question, the Scripture and prophecy are naturally also called into question. It created the lie of lies, making humanity susceptible for more deceptions. Being unable to recognize what's in front of them, and rather listen to Lucifer's minions than their own senses and inner voice. And all of this makes all of Lucifer's other deceptive agendas possible in the first place. It is the basis for the theory of evolution. And this was necessary so that humanity would eventually see the manipulation of genes through gene therapies as a natural step in human development. Which is just a repetition of the Nephilim giants' agendas, meddling with the creation. The spinning ball in the open vacuum of nothingness also created the basis for the soul-crushing
He's talking
philosophies
about,
like
like,
nihilism
when
in the Age of Enlightenment,
the
and a
return
comeback
of
of
the
atheism.
giants or the Nephilim.
So the ultimate inversion of truth, that man created God instead of the other way around. It created a multi-generational trauma for all of humanity, who were born into a world without God and purpose. Fertile ground for hedonism and an amplification of,
as you know, when they passed the law that they had to take, basically where they took God out of the school. Now he doesn't even exist in the law, in the courtroom,
the sinful nature of
A lot
man.
of good things have happened because of that, right?
1582, a papal bull by Pope Gregory XIII decrees the general use of the Gregorian calendar. This helped to erase the Millennium Kingdom from history. Gregory XIII was a friend of the Jesuits and Ignatius of Loyola. For example, he promoted the Jesuit universities founded by Ignatius, which from then on taught a new view of the universe. By 1749, there were already 700 Jesuit universities throughout Europe and hundreds more followed all over the world. Everywhere they went to missionize, they left behind universities. The Jesuit College in Ingolstadt received 3 Jesuit teachers in 1549 as a result of an agreement between Duke William IV and Ignatius of Loyola. Adam Weishaupt, the later founder of the Illuminati order, was also taught at the university. Some Jesuit universities are still elite schools today.
There's no recorded.
1594 to 1595.
This guy
The
is
French
breaking
chronologist
down
Joseph Justus
the,
Scaliger publishes several influential
current
works in which a
family
new
members
chronology
of the
of human
Illuminati.
history is presented. His work De Emendation Temporum in 1583 was to revolutionize the ideas of ancient chronology.
All them
That is to show that
whistleblowers
ancient
are
history was not limited
no
to that
longer
of the
with
Greeks
us.
and Romans, but also that of the Persians, Babylonians, Egyptians and Jews, which had previously been neglected. And he showed that the historical narratives and fragments of each of these groups, and their different systems of chronology must be critically compared. In the remaining 24 years of his life, he expanded his work in De Emendation. He succeeded in reconstructing the lost chronicle of Eusebius, one of the most valuable ancient documents, especially valuable for ancient chronology. He printed this in 1606 in his Thesaurus Temporum, in which he collected, restored and organized all chronological relics preserved in Greek or Latin. With these works, the Millennium Kingdom continued to get covered up, and Scaliger used the Gregorian calendar for his work. Here, a few centuries may have been inserted into the chronology, and the history of antiquity stretched out.
It's kind of like they have
And the
a globe
second coming
in
of
every
Christ and his
classroom.
reign were simply forgotten. Officially, he was at odds with the Jesuits,
I
who
don't
were
need someone
supposedly
to tell
among
me
his
the
greatest
same
critics,
thing every year,
but the symbolism
after
in his
year,
portraits
after year,
and his
after
published
year.
works suggest that he belonged to a secret society.
I only need to be told something once, maybe twice. Depends if I'm married or not. Africa, Asia, Europe. Get that man.
16th to 17th century. During the colonization of Africa, Asia and North and South America, many artifacts were looted by the major European powers and locked away from public view, for example by the Vatican's secret archives. The Vatican Secret Archives, now renamed to the less suspicious but still interesting name Vatican Apostolic Library, was formally founded in 1475 by Pope Sixtus IV, and Pope Julius II ordered an extension to the building. It contains 75,000 codices and 1.1 million books.
Big man,
Or the
good to
artifacts
see you,
were
bro.
simply destroyed. As a permanent war was waged on the open sea during this time to weaken the trade of other nations, regardless of whether the nations on land were at war, many of the artifacts also lay at the bottom of the sea.
We're just
This hid
finishing
evidence of
up
past
this
civilizations and especially
documentary
the
on the
Millennium
little
Kingdom.
season.
The pirates roaming the seas and coasts also played their part here, and are linked to the Illuminati through the skull and bones symbolism.
All right. Rising of the Beast in the New Rome. This is an event that the modern church preaches about. It's the old Revelation story, the tribulation and the mark of the beast, the rise of the beast, and the death of the beast and the rise of the Antichrist, the one who's going to rule over them all and make us all one kingdom, and we will all bow before him. That's what everybody believes. I mean, in some form or another, you kind of believe that, and especially in the Christian community. And it's interesting to find out that what events have already happened and what events haven't. Like, this event clearly happened. We're going to read Maccabees. I know that's not in your Bibles.
16th century.
Most of them.
The Renaissance saw the rise of humanism, meaning placing man above God, and the rediscovery of atheistic principles of ancient Roman concepts and ancient Greek philosophies. Humanists wanted to see themselves as part of a new age and scornfully rejected the previous age known as the Middle Ages. Middle Ages reduced the glorious Millennium Kingdom to a slip between the Lucifer-dominated ages of antiquity and the new Renaissance. Renaissance humanism also had an impact on jurisprudence and revived the classical Roman law of antiquity. Humanism began in Italy and spread from there first to France and then throughout Europe. The Reformation was shaped entirely by humanists such as Philip Melanchthon, Martin Luther's most important partner. Incidentally, Joseph Justus Scaliger learned Roman law from the humanist jurist Jacques Cujas. His father, Julius Caesar Scaliger, was also an important early humanist and, interestingly, was also in contact with the prophet Nostradamus. His father's origins and past are obscure today, and he was apparently accused even then of creating a false identity of origin, something these elites still like to do today. These Renaissance humanists demonstrably despised the Middle Ages and admired Roman antiquity.
There's a whole lot I could say about this young man right here. He's not a young man anymore, and a lot of you recognize this fella. But this fella is not what you think he is. I don't know why. I don't understand why these politicians will push an agenda while at the same time denying their own reality about it. It just doesn't make sense.
Humanists demonstrably despised the Middle Ages and admired Roman antiquity. Could this bias be reflected in the chronology of history drawn up by Scaliger? I think so. Humanism, of course, also formed the philosophical basis for the world philosophy currently being constructed, transhumanism, so placing machines and artificial intelligence above man and God. (1614). The Rosicrucian order addresses the public with an anonymous manifesto and announces its existence and agenda. Further manifestos followed in 1615 and 1616. The manifestos emerged in Kassel in the dark of the Protestant Reformation and sought to renew the Reformation, which had stalled almost 100 years after Luther. The Rosicrucians emerged from a group of Lutheran reformers from Tübingen. This group of friends of Tobias Hess were followers of Chiliasm. In other words, they believed in Millennialism and the imminent coming of the Millennium Kingdom in the first third of the 17th century. However, the opposite was probably the case, as the Millennium Kingdom had already been over for almost 100 years. Hess, who was also attracted to mysticism and alchemy, had many friends. Among them were lawyers, clergymen and scholars, such as the theologian and mathematician Johann Valentin Andrea, who had an enormous influence on the Protestantism that was emerging at the time. As we know today, he was the author of the three aforementioned manifestos of the Rosicrucian order. They warned of a rapid technological development that social development would not be able to keep up with, which would ultimately lead to conflict. According to the legends contained in these manifestos, the order was allegedly founded around the year 1400 by a certain Christian Rosenkreuz. At the age of 16, he went on a world tour for several years, Damkar, Egypt, Fez, Spain and back to Germany, and learned esoteric knowledge from Turkish, Jewish and Persian magicians, as well as possibly from Sufi and Zoroastrian masters. The Rosicrucian order was founded around the year 1400 when he was almost 30 years old. It had therefore already existed since the 15th century, and Martin Luther and Francis Bacon could well have been members, at least according to legend. Christian Rosenkreutz is said to have lived to be a proud 106 years old. His body is said to have been found 120 years after his death by a brother of the order in a perfectly preserved state in a crypt inside the earth. The inscription on the tomb is said to read, "Visit the bowels of the earth. Through rectification you shall find the hidden stone."
We're going to get into this, but this floating island, New Jerusalem, I'm not exactly sure if it is floating right now or not, or if it's even around or it's still here. But if it is, I was thinking about something today. I was listening to JT Follows JC and Madeline talk from Leaving Babylon. And it is interesting to think about that maybe some of these places are here and we can go there, perhaps. I don't know. And then again, I don't even know if maybe they're right. Maybe the new world is just us going to these new lands, or old lands perhaps, but they're new to us. And essentially we would have a new heaven and a new earth, in a sense. But I've never found truth by looking at things from a point of view of in a sense. I like thinking about that, though. It does sound good.
The legends surrounding Christian Rosenkreutz are numerous and presumably often allegorical. He is said to have been Lazarus resurrected by Jesus in his previous life, or he was in fact simply Francis Bacon. One of the members of the Tübingen circle of friends from which the Rosicrucians emerged was the lawyer Christoph Besold, who taught Roman law at the Jesuit college in Ingolstadt and was a friend of Johannes Kepler. Later, when Katharina Kepler, Johannes Kepler's mother, was prosecuted on witchcraft charges, Besold was one of the jurists dealing with the case, which was dropped. He was not the only one of them who was a friend of Kepler. The Tübingen circle of friends also included the astronomer and mathematician Wilhelm Schickard, who was a convinced heliocentrist and sometimes worked with Johannes Kepler. He invented a handheld planetarium. Simon Stadion was the numerologist and prophet of the group, according to whom the Pope would fall in 1604. Others of the circle of friends were connected with the nobility of Württemberg. It is very clear, in my opinion, that this Rosicrucian order, which grew rapidly after 1616, played an important role with the Protestants at the time of the Reformation. They and the Jesuits both had a role to play in the rewriting of history and the new interpretation of Christian eschatology. It was not until much later that the Order of Gold and Rosicrucians was formally founded within the ranks of German Freemasonry in Frankfurt in 1757. But by then there were already many who had joined the movement. In the 19th century, several other Rosicrucian orders followed within Freemasonry, particularly in England and the USA, which still exist today. The French philosopher, mathematician and early scientist René Descartes first published what he considered to be the most fundamental truth, "I think, therefore I am," in Discourse of the Method in 1637. With this, however, he only pointed out the most fundamental error of the collective psyche. He equated the noisy thinker in the head with the feeling of beingness that comes from being present in complete silence. He reduced endless consciousness to the very limited ego mind that is trapped in a constant state of unfulfillment and creates illusions of separation. The fundamental truth is actually only, I am. Descartes attended a Jesuit university and his membership of the Rosicrucians is disputed. The initials of his name have been associated with the acronym RC frequently used by the Rosicrucians. Furthermore, in 1619 Descartes moved to Ulm, which was known as the international center of the Rosicrucian movement, and on his journey through Germany met Johannes Faulhaber, who had previously spoken out personally in favor of joining the Brotherhood. Descartes dedicated the work entitled The Mathematical Treasure Trove of Polybius, Citizen of the World, to the learned men throughout the world and especially to the distinguished BRC, Brothers of the Rosy Cross, in Germany. The work was not completed and its publication is uncertain. 1651, the 30 Years' War, started by rebellion or Reformation, and the other religious wars of the time, were so cruel, destructive and traumatizing to the collective psyche that they were already laying the groundwork for the separation of church and state. The creation of trauma in order to force far-reaching social change is a tactic that Lucifer's henchmen still use today due to the enormously high success rate, and which therefore runs like a common thread through our history.
We have here.
Never again should popes be allowed to command military troops in the name of God. This is why the English philosopher Thomas Hobbes published his now best-known work, Leviathan, in 1651, named after the biblical beast in the Book of Revelation. In it, the idea of a sovereign was postulated for the.
Yeah, it's interesting how they draw the Leviathan as just this giant man here, which is basically, if you see it as it zooms in, that giant man is just a bunch of bodies, like people stacked together create this thing. So the illusion is that the Leviathan is everybody together. That, you know, they're trying to say that that's a, you know, but that's how that is. But the interesting thing about it is, having read enough of the Bible, you know that the Leviathan was a beast, like a big animal. Like it was massive, and it played in the oceans. God allowed it to do that, but it wasn't allowed to mess with people. And it didn't unless it was told to.
In the Book of Revelation. In it, the idea of a sovereign was postulated for the first time, to whom absolute power is transferred and who enters into a social contract with the people. The people irrevocably and voluntarily surrender all rights of self-determination and self-defense to the sovereign. In return, the sovereign protects the people from each other. This would be roughly the idea of the state as we know it today. An omnipotent, absolutist monster that permanently enforces peace. And it was an attack on the Christian monarchy, of King Jesus Christ, and the first step towards the idea of liberty. More on this later. For in this idea, it would not be pure divine grace that would give the king the right to rule, but an, albeit irrevocable, agreement with his subjects. The seeds of democracy, on which the later Luciferian revolutions could build, were thus already planted here. The above-mentioned Rosicrucian Christoph Besold also published state-heretical approaches to the sovereign. 16th to 17th century, little by little, the world was rediscovered.
I just like listening to your streams. I like listening to your videos. You just have a soothing voice, man. I like listening to you. You have a very good presence about you. And you can tell that you're genuine about what you're saying.
And conquered. References to past advanced civilizations were taken by the explorers of the nobility and the Jesuits, and were locked away or were reinterpreted. The Jesuits were particularly active in Asian countries such as China, India, Indochina, Indonesia, the Philippines, Japan, as well as North and South America and Ethiopia in Africa. Until they were banned in 1773, the Jesuits' missionary activities mainly involved exporting the dogma of the new heliocentric cosmology and the new chronology. In 1660, the founding of the Scientific Royal Society in London followed under Rosicrucian influence. This scientific society further promoted the deception and is responsible for many expeditions of the 17th and 18th centuries. They are still active today and are therefore the oldest society of their kind. Its French counterpart was the French Academy of Sciences, founded by King Louis XIV in 1666. A highly symbolic year. These were the first academic gatekeepers to hid artifacts like skeletons of giants, but similar institutions followed in the 19th century. Let us now look at the climax of Satan's little time, the Age of Enlightenment. Let's take a look at the second possibility, or the second wave of Satan's little time. The beginning of the so-called Enlightenment around the year 1700 finally signaled the beginning of the end of the Millennial Empire. The Age of Enlightenment between 1700 and 1800 saw the development in Europe and North America of overcoming all structures that hindered progress through rational thinking. In plain language, this meant religion and monarchy. They were to lose their power and significance for good. The word Enlightenment, or Age of Enlightenment, also refers to an intellectual and social reform movement from 1780 onwards. The most important characteristic of the Enlightenment was reason as a universal authority of judgment. This also included the fight against prejudice and the turn towards the natural sciences, the plea for religious tolerance, and the orientation towards natural law. What all sounds very nice to today's ears, buzzwords such as tolerance, are still used today, is the manifestation of a struggle between two diametrically opposed spiritual forces. Lucifer's rebellion against the monarchy of God came to earth with the fall of the angels from heaven. After a first round of spiritual warfare in ancient times, a loss to Jesus Christ and Archangel Michael followed, which ultimately led to Lucifer's millennial prison term in the abyss. He was then set free again, and a second and final round of this rebellion against God followed, in which all people have participated ever since, whether knowingly or unknowingly. The core of this conflict is the definition of the nature of man and the concept of freedom. Is man born in sin, and should he strive for freedom from sin? Or, is man born good and should have the liberty to sin? The Creator of the earth and humanity holds the view that a strict order creates a harmony that creates the conditions for redemption from sin and leads to fulfillment. However, one of his creations, the proud angel Lucifer, was of the opinion that this strict order leads to stagnation. He postulated another way. By implementing dualism, that is, introducing negativity into paradise, the necessary tension for the growth of creation would be generated, and, with the knowledge of heaven, humanity could free itself from the ignorance imposed by God. Chaos would therefore have to be generated as a motor of development, so the exact opposite of the divine order against which it is necessary to rebel. Only in this way, according to Luciferianism, could creation grow and ascend to higher dimensions. However, according to the biblical understanding, this ascent to heaven is given by God and His Son Jesus Christ as long as one becomes aware of one's sinful nature and the sacrifice on the cross, accepts Jesus as the Son of God, asks for forgiveness for past sins, and is freed from the burden of sin by following the divine laws. It is a person born in sin versus a fundamentally good person. It is service to others versus service to oneself. It is order versus chaos. It is my God versus me God. It is humility.
You know, you see this a lot in like branding, like say one car dealership over the other car dealership. Say one does gasoline and one does electric. Whoever has the most money really is going to have the most power, because they're going to have the most influence, and because they have the most money now, they're able to dominate the competition and push them down. Maybe they create a law that says it's illegal to charge a car and run it on a battery alone. It has to have gasoline. And now the electric company is shut down. So essentially, to keep you from building your own electric car, they took away all the information and knowledge that would lead you to the ability to build your own electric car.
Humility versus pride. It is ultimately life versus destruction. For this rebellion, Lucifer, and the third of the other angels who joined his rebellion, was cast out of heaven by God. In doing so, Lucifer passed the torch of knowledge from this higher plane of existence to us humans. Here he continues his rebellion, and now revenge for being cast out against God. Here you see a common symbol of the Age of Enlightenment during that time. The Roman goddess Minerva provides the light of knowledge, bringing together the religions of the world. The similarities to Lucifer, the light-bearer, are obvious. These fallen angels continued the rebellion on earth, created the serpent seed, created chimeras and monsters, and created the Nephilim giants. Since then, the spiritual war has also been raging on earth. Noah's Ark and the flood, the Baal cults of Babylonia and Canaan, and the destruction of the Tower of Babel were just a few of the many acts of this war. At some point, God sent His Son Jesus Christ to earth to set things right once and for all. He taught by example, taking on the past sins of mankind in His sacrifice while being murdered by the henchmen of Lucifer, the Roman Baal cults. And the proposed theory of this video is that His return, the capture of Lucifer, the delivery of the Holy Spirit, and the millennial kingdom thereafter have already taken place here on earth. Jesus Christ has already proven that a paradisiacal kingdom of heaven on earth is possible under the holy order of God, and the beautiful cathedrals today are the silent witnesses of this glorious time. And now, in the Age of Enlightenment, or likely already in the Renaissance, Lucifer was released again and allowed to take the reins again undisturbed. And he picked up right where he left off 1,000 years earlier. Only this time he can be even more organized, because this time he doesn't have Jesus Christ and the archangels breathing down his neck. So he continues his rebellion against God by handing over divine knowledge to humanity in order to free them from the bondage of God's monarchy, by creating chaos in the order and by persecuting Christianity. The philosophy of the Enlightenment philosophers. Liberation through intellect and knowledge is therefore almost identical to the religion of Luciferianism. There are also some similarities in terminology.
I wear this hat,
Reformation and protest, like in Protestantism, are just other words for rebellion.
My head gets
and the
cold.
time of enlightenment fits with the angel of light, who became the dark Satan through his fall, who, according to his followers, delivered the torch of knowledge and enlightened humanity. Illuminism, again, light, which built on the Age of Enlightenment, gave reason a truly spiritual dimension. This religious and philosophical movement of the 18th to early 19th century contained influences from Gnosticism, Neoplatonism, Western esotericism, and Eastern religions. It is sometimes contrasted with the socio-political Enlightenment and seen as a spiritual reaction or corrective to the Enlightenment's dependence on reason. Followers and writers of Illuminism were revolutionaries and often also members of Masonic lodges, like Karl Gotthelf von Hund, or members of the Illuminati order, like Karl von Eckhausen.
He's looked into a lot
Other
of people.
Illuminists such as Martinez de Pasquale, Louis Claude de Saint Martin, and Jean-Baptiste Willemaz founded Martinism, a form of esoteric Christianity, and the short-lived Order of Knight Masons elect priests of the universe, or simply Eluscones, which was active in France between 1767 and 1774. We will take a closer look at all three main points of the Enlightenment: the founding of the Illuminati order, the American Revolution, and the French Revolution. After the Jesuit order was gradually banned by the kings of Europe in their homelands and their colonies in the mid-18th century, Pope Clement XIV, under pressure from Enlightenment thinkers, officially declared the Jesuits outlawed throughout the Holy Empire in 1773 with the letter Dominus Ac Redemptor. Many see this step as an important marker in the transition to the secularity of Catholicism. At the time, the kings sensed secret ambitions for power. The Jesuit-led reductions in the colonies were increasingly becoming a state within a state. They were also accused of being the masterminds behind certain assassinations.
I'm gonna step away and
Even
grab
after
some
the
water,
ban,
though.
the mistrust never completely ceased, as Jesuit activities continued in Prussia and Russia, and the ban was not properly enforced everywhere. The sudden death of Pope Clement XIV a year after the ban was imposed was seen as a poisoning attack by the Jesuits. The ban of the Jesuits was to prove temporary, but the time was ripe for a new force of Luciferians. On May 1, 1776, the Illuminati order was founded by Adam Weishaupt in the city of Ingolstadt, Bavaria. Adam Weishaupt attended the Jesuit college in Ingolstadt and obtained a doctorate in law here in 1768 at the age of 20. I mentioned this college multiple times before, as it was also attended by the early Rosicrucian Christoph Besold, who in 1637 taught Roman law there. The Jesuit College of Ingolstadt was one of the first Jesuit colleges and was an important base for the Counter-Reformation.
Right. Sorry, I want to interrupt that to say that in my next week's stream, when we come back on Monday, I'm going to start over in this Bible study with Jasher. We're going to go through the beginning because Jasher does cover a lot more of the details that go along with Genesis. And so I know that those that are involved in Millennial Kingdom, Little Season, timeline deception, community, I know you're adults. You should be able to understand this. So although you have your own eyes to read and your own ears to listen to other audio versions of this book, I want to read it with you and go over it and break it down and show you the parallels and the differences, and so that you can understand why I say what I say when I refer to the Bible as a children's book, because it's not a bad thing that it's written that way. And it may not be intended to be that way, it's just how I'm perceiving it. But regardless, you're adults now, and so you should have the adult form content. So I'm going to try to bring that to you next time we come back here on Monday. Also seen in Illuminated
From 1772
Church.
onwards, Adam Weishaupt taught law as a professor and converted to Protestantism. His way of thinking was influenced by his godfather Johann Adam von Eichstätt, who in turn was a great advocate of Christian Wolff, probably the most influential German philosopher in the early Enlightenment period. On May 1, 1776, Weishaupt founded the Order of the Illuminati in the Bavarian.
Adam Weishaupt. So yeah, he did. Yeah, he's right. He did found the Order of Illuminati. From him, you got certain people like the Rockefellers and whatnot. So I wanted to point this out. As I watch these videos, or this video in particular, I'm breaking this thing down layer by layer, image by image. And what I'm saying is that that's what it means to read the Bible line upon line, precept upon precept. You're like I said, you just have to just imagine that the Bible is a children's book, but you're now an adult, so you have to now read it like an adult would. So essentially, knowing that it's written like a children's book, you would break it apart line by line, precept upon precept that's within the context of those lines. You don't take the lines from this part and add them over here, because then you would be taking it out of context. But you have to break this thing down, like you understand it. It's like you analyze each word and layer of it. That's all that means.
Electorate. Weishaupt initially selected 5 of his students as the first members. The word derives from illuminatus, meaning enlightened. May 1st was probably not chosen at random, as Belton is also celebrated on this day. This is one of the 8 festivals in the Druidic calendar. It marks the beginning of summer and the start of the beautiful season. The night from April 30th to May 1st is known as Walpurgis Night, and was considered by witches to be the most important ritual and Sabbath day, when contact is made with the devil around a large bonfire, with dancing and psychedelic substances. The satanic connection to this date must have been well known, especially at the time. The members of the Illuminati order gave themselves aliases. Weishaupt called himself Brother Spartacus. Since the discovery of the so-called Swedish box, a box full of lists of members of the Illuminati order and the Freemasons, it has been known that Johann Wolfgang Goethe, probably the most famous poet in history, was also an Illuminati member.
Imagine
He gave
being
himself
on
the
the
nickname
team that
Galies.
can't keep a secret.
The box was to be donated to a Swedish lodge, then came into the hands of the Gestapo and was finally confiscated by the Soviet Union at the end of the Second World War, which
Like,
is
they
why
have
it
to
could
tell
only
you.
be examined by historians from
or at least make it
1991
available
onwards.
for you.
The order grew
It's kinda like
rapidly and at its
roadblocks,
peak had
you
over
know,
2,000 members
they
in
will
Bavaria,
post these
Prussia,
roadblocks
France,
when they're
Hungary,
going to have
Italy
them in
and Poland.
places that you're not
The
looking.
order was officially banned
like on
by
the
the
door of a
Bavarian
library
government
or
as
something,
early
like
as
a public place like
1785
that.
and is said to have finally ceased its activities in 1793 at the latest. The Bavarian king felt threatened by their anti-religious and anti-monarchical stance. But it is much more likely that the members of the order simply went underground, or simply infiltrated Freemasonry. The boundaries between these two organizations are blurred anyway, as there were several dual memberships. For example, there is also the Association of the Illuminati Order Minerval Church of Stagira, founded in Bonn in 1781. According to Adam Weishaupt's classification of the Illuminati Order into three classes, Minervals, or disciples of Minerva, were members of the second degree. When the order was banned in Bavaria in 1785, the people of Bonn also dissolved their Minerval Church of Stagira. However, Elector Max Franz was an enlightened man and said at the time, "I assume that there are good, honest, and capable people among Illuminati and Jesuits alike, without the order being to blame for the behavior of one or the other." Most of the Bonn Illuminati continued with their plans and founded a reading and recreation society on December 1, 1787, which was tolerated by the Elector. The Illuminati order was closely linked to the German aristocracy, and I would like to shed some more light on this. Because most people in the conspiracy culture only focus on American Freemasons and the British aristocracy, and ignore the outstanding role the German bloodlines have in the Luciferian power structure. Let's get started. The Prussian King Frederick II, or Frederick the Great, who also became king of the entire Prussian Empire in 1772, came from the German noble family of the Hohenzollerns. It was Count Albrecht Wolfgang Schaumburg-Lippe, also a German noble family, who was not only the first ruling nobleman in Germany to become a Freemason, but who also introduced Frederick the Great to Freemasonry in 1738. They were both members of the St. George zum Kaiserhof Hamburg Lodge, the oldest German Masonic lodge. After his accession to the throne, Frederick the Great continued his Masonic activities at Charlottenburg Palace, where he established a lodge for the nobility. In 1740, he accepted his brother-in-law Duke Ferdinand Braunschweig-Wolfenbüttel into the Masonic lodge, who in turn became Grand Master General there.
We're getting
Prince Karl
close
of
to the time
Hesse-Kassel
period
was the
where people
Danish
are
stadtholder
easier
of
to
the
be
duchies of
traced back
Schleswig
to.
and Holstein, and founded several
All that
Masonic
other
lodges in Europe.
That he's
Now,
talking
the
is
so-called strict observance was a
for the
high-degree
most part
system of German
hearsay, but
Freemasonry at the time,
rather
which was already
reliable
in recurring crises from
information
1772 onwards. They were plagued by internal disagreements about the name, direction, and future of this Masonic high-degree system. The formal foundation of the Illuminati order in 1776 was already a reaction to these crises. The whole thing culminated in the Wilhelmsbad Convention of July 16, 1782, where the alleged origins of strict observance in the Knights Templar, and the supposed existence of secret superiors at the head of the order turned out to be fabrications. The strict observance thus lost much of its appeal and quickly disintegrated after 1782. However, this benefited the Illuminati order, where Ferdinand Braunschweig-Wolfenbüttel and Karl von Hessen-Kassel became the most important new members. The successor to the Hohenzollern dynasty was the nephew of Frederick II, Frederick William II, who ascended the Prussian throne in August 1786. He was known for his interest in occultism and mysticism and appears in membership lists of the Rosicrucians. He was also a great fan of contemporary composers such as Ludwig van Beethoven, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and Joseph Haydn. The latter two composers were friends and both were members of the Viennese Masonic Lodge zur Wahren Eintracht from 1784, to which Mozart also brought his father Leopold. This lodge was led by Ignaz von Born, who was also a member of the Order of the Illuminati and bore the code name Furius Camillus. The opera The Magic Flute, which premiered on September 30, 1791, was intended as an allegorical and popular representation of the Enlightenment ideals of Freemasonry, with Ignaz von Born as the model for the wise man Sarastro. However, Beethoven also had contact with the Illuminati, the aforementioned Reading Society, which emerged from the Bond Circle of the Illuminati in 1787, had some interesting members over the years, including Karl Marx and Julius Schneider. Schneider taught at Bonn University, which brought Beethoven into early contact with the French Revolution. One of the founding members of the Reading Society was the composer and Freemason, Christian Gottlieb Niffy, who gave Beethoven piano lessons for a time. His Illuminati alias was Glaucus. Niffy was also a member of the Masonic Lodge Caroline to the Three Peacocks. Franz Anton Ries was also a member of the Bonn Illuminati and the subsequent Reading Society, and gave Beethoven violin lessons. Nikolaus Simrock was a horn player at the court of the Elector of Cologne and Bonn and a music publisher of both Joseph Haydn and Ludwig van Beethoven. He was a good friend of the Beethoven family and, of course, a member of the Bonn Illuminati and later their Reading Society. Both Ries and Simrock were also members of the Masonic Lodge Les Frères Courageux. The reason I say that is that I really want to drive home the point that there were often dual memberships between the Illuminati and Freemasonry, and the Illuminati certainly continued to exist within the Freemasons. Also, is it conceivable that these composers, who are still celebrated today, were making their songs according to Pythagorean teachings, for example by using sacred harmonies within the solfeggio frequency scale? I think so. The numerological cult of Pythagoras of ancient Greece plays a major role within these secret societies. And it's another sign of the resurging of the beast.
You can join me on Discord, Big Mal. I'll talk with you.
It should be mentioned the relevance of the German nobility, which is an incredibly powerful part of the ruling Cain bloodlines. For the German House of Coburg is the origin of many powerful European dynasties. Franz of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld married into the House of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel through Sophie Antoinette. They fathered 7 children, who founded powerful dynasties and forged wide-ranging ties with other European houses. They gave rise to the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, whose descendants changed their name to Windsor in 1917 and became today's British royal family. There was even a connection to the German imperial house of Hohenzollern. Their son Leopold became the first king of Belgium in 1831 and was also a Freemason. His descendants still make up the Belgian royal family today. And son Ferdinand gave rise to the House of Coburg-Braganza, which ruled the Kingdom of Portugal until the monarchy was abolished there in 1910. The Bulgarian Tsardom also has its roots in Coburg.
Alright, there we go.
There is an interesting symbol that has run through Lucifer's power structures for centuries, and which is closely linked to the German bloodlines. The skull and crossbones. An ancient symbol of death and poison.
You know, sometimes it's good to just not respond, you know?
On August 9, 1741, King Frederick the Great founded the 5th Hussar Regiment of the Prussian Army, which was initially called the Regiment of Black Hussars. They wore black hats with skulls and bones in an X shape. They were regarded as a merciless and feared cavalry unit in the Prussian wars of the 18th and 19th centuries, like in the 7 Years' War or the War against Napoleon. They existed until 1917. Friedrich Wilhelm von Braunschweig-Wolfenbüttel was Prince of Braunschweig-Wolfenbüttel and a Prussian general. The so-called Black Duke adopted the symbolism of the skull and crossbones for his Hussar regiment, also known as the Black Squadron, which became famous throughout Europe during the Napoleonic Wars. And of course the skull and crossbones symbolism was adopted by Wehrmacht soldiers of the First World War in honor of the Hussars, as well as by the German Freikorps of the Weimar Republic in the 1920s.
Trying to be nefarious.
During the Second World War, the Luftwaffe fighter squadron used the skull and crossbones.
What they were told.
And of course the SS and the Nazi regime had a skull and crossbones on their uniform, and the 3rd Armored Division of the SS had the skull and crossbones on their insignia. The SS was of course also regarded as particularly merciless and loyal, and also had aspects of a mystical secret society. Frederick William of Prussia was the last crown prince of the German Empire from the House of Hohenzollern until the monarchy was abolished in the November Revolution of 1918. And he was an important supporter of Adolf Hitler. Today, German historians believe that Wilhelm made a significant contribution to the establishment of the Nazi dictatorship through his activities, particularly in 1932 and 1933. In the early years of the Third Reich, he effectively campaigned for a military dictatorship under Hitler and joined the SA. He also liked to wear the skull and crossbones, for example on the historically important Potsdam Day, in reference to the Hussars of his great-great-great-great-grandfather Frederick II. This celebration to mark the reopening of the Reichstag is regarded as Hitler's seizure of power and was attended not only by Prince Wilhelm but also by his 3 brothers Prince Eitel Friedrich of Prussia, Prince Oscar and Prince August Wilhelm, a Oberfuhrer of the SA. Prince Wilhelm's role in the Nazi seizure of power even led to a legal dispute between the present-day German government and the present-day Hohenzollerns concerning compensation payments to the public purse. To add insult to injury, the Hohenzollerns then sued the German government and demanded compensation payments for expropriations after the Second World War. This made them extremely unpopular and hated by the German public, which is why they rejected the demand. But where does this symbolism come from? Where did it originate in Germany? The origin lies with the Order of the Skull and Crossbones. This short-lived order of knights in the Duchy of Ols and Lower Silesia was founded by Silvius Nimrod I in 1652.
Multitasking.
It is not known why he gave himself the name Nimrod, the name of the Babylonian king who rebelled against God. Duke Silvius Nimrod, who appointed the Silesian mystic Angelus Silesius as personal physician to his court in 1649, was influenced by the Silesian Rosicrucians, a movement whose center was located in Ludwigsdorf, the estate of Count Abraham von Frankenberg near Ols. The knights and ladies of the new order were to dedicate themselves to researching the mysteries of God and nature, and avoid unvirtuous behavior. The remembrance of mortality was a central theme, and their motto was Memento Mori.
Let's see if I can pull this up. I don't know if this is going to allow me to pull this up. There it is. Oh, yeah. All right. So, oh man, I hit equal. I didn't mean to do that. I just wanted to point something out here. You know, when we build these timelines, we have different ways of doing it, I guess. And it just seems to me that this is working backwards, not forwards. It's like we're starting at 1776. We take 250 from that, and that brings us to 1526. Add 250 to 1776, and then that brings us to 2026. 250 more years, 276. Another What is it now? I mean, I guess you could pick your poison. If it's 2276 or 2526 or any time within that area, whether you're within 100 years of that or not, none of us are going to live that long to know if that's the case. If it is 2026, that puts us right around the corner. You know, I had an interesting conversation with a man. I think he's 5022 Freedom. I like listening to his content because he sounds sincere. You can hear it in his voice. The fear of the Lord is clear in his voice. That's why I like listening to him. But he said it best. You know, he said it right. We need to come together and start talking and spreading this thing and talking about it. It's important that people know what's going on in the world around them. I mean, we all go to work and have lives and families, and we don't want to jeopardize the things that we have right now. But, you know, at some point, we will have to make a choice. And I find that interesting, how all these dates work. And if they're leading us to this time that I think they are, we're in trouble. We need to tighten up, is what I'm saying.
They wore a ring on their left finger with a black bow and a skull and crossbones. The order existed until the 18th century. From 1700, the skull and crossbones on a black background was also used by pirates. This flag, known as the Jolly Roger, came in dozens of variations, sometimes with a saber, sometimes with bones.
All these images, y'all have seen them before.
A symbol of the gods Saturn
especially
and the transits of life,
boy.
were just as often to be seen on it as pierced hearts and devil
some
figures.
Little girls, I'm sure. Yeah.
The term false flag attack comes from the pirates, because they often hoisted false flags to lull their victims to safety until the last minute, and only hoisted the Jolly Rogers when it was no longer possible for their victim to escape. And of course the symbol also appears in the Skull and Bones Society founded by William Huntington Russell in the USA in 1832. This extremely powerful Yale secret society produced U.S. presidents such as the Bushes and powerful bankers. In addition, the CIA was founded by Skull and Bones members, as about half of the signers of the National Security Act of 1947, which was the ultimate birth of the CIA, the NSA and the billion-dollar black budget deep state sector,
that's a deep
attended
dive
Yale
right
and were members
there.
of Skull and Bones. In addition, important people in the early days
That's a
of the
deep
CIA were
dive,
Skull
a
and
deep
Bones.
hole. It's amazing how they kept up with all this information.
According to insider author Alexander Robbins, the Skull and Bones tomb on Yale campus contains several pictures and relics from 18th century German fraternities, and founder William Huntington Russell was also allegedly inspired to found the Skull and Bones during his regular visits to Germany. Are they the American arm of the Illuminati, who continued their operations there 40 years after they were banned, or are they the German ruling bloodlines? But the Bushes and the CIA, like the SS, have definitely been true to the death and venom motto of Skull and Bones symbolism. Their wars in the Middle East killed millions, caused large influxes of refugees into Europe, caused the rise of Islamic terror, some of which even adopt the Skull and Bones symbolism, and they played a role in the approval of toxic aspartame. To name just a few of their greatest hits. Some Islamic terrorist attacks also took place on March 22nd, following the number 322 of their order. And the CIA was involved everywhere. I think these are the most loyal minions of Lucifer, the ruling bloodlines of Germany. The skull and bones will be discussed again in later projects, when we reach the 19th century in Satan's little season. Because this is off topic right now. The American and French revolutions took place during the work of the Illuminati in the Pluto-Aquarius constellation of 1776 and 1795, and thus the founding of the United States also took place during this time. On July 4, 1776, just 2 months after the founding of the Illuminati Order, Freemasons celebrated the independence of the United States through the Declaration of Independence written by Thomas Jefferson and adopted by the Second Continental Congress. The signing of this document by the so-called Founding Fathers, almost half of whom were Freemasons, is regarded as the birth of the United States of America, whose colonies were now independent of the British Crown and whose first president was the Freemason George Washington. The entire country was built by the Freemasons, or Illuminati, and plays a crucial role in this saga of Satan. The crown, remnants of the millennial empire under King Christ, was henceforth gone. In 1787 followed the adoption of the United States Constitution with the Bill of Rights, which was signed by all 13 colonies by 1791. The very first of the 10 articles of the Bill of Rights cements the separation of state and religion and ensures religious freedom for all citizens. Which is, of course, a direct attack on the previous age, effectively preventing a new millennium kingdom, as well as paving the way for secret societies and their Luciferian doctrines in the long term. Even then, many people suspected that the American Revolution and the founding of the United States of America was an Illuminati coup. In April 1798, the scientist and inventor John Robinson published the book, Proof of a Conspiracy Against All Religions and Governments Carried On in the Secret Meetings of Freemason, Illuminati and Reading Societies. George Washington mentions the Illuminati and this book in a letter to G.W. Snyder. Washington assures Snyder that he is aware of the Illuminati's goal to overthrow all government and all religion, but he does not believe that these teachings are being propagated by Freemasonry.
George Washington and William Russell, September 20, 1798. Sir, many apologies are due to you for my not acknowledging the receipt of your obliging favor of the 22nd Ulto, and for not thanking you at an earlier period for the book you had the goodness to send me. I don't know what this is about, but that does look like 1 7 and a 6 right there, at least.
In America. Washington says he doesn't have time to read because he's busy with repairs at Mount Vernon. But in another letter between Washington and Snyder, he writes on October 24, 1798, "It was not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati or the principles of Jacobinism have not spread throughout the United States. On the contrary, no one is really more convinced of this fact than I am. The idea I wished to convey was that I do not believe that the Masonic lodges in this country, as societies, are endeavoring to propagate the diabolical doctrines of the former, or the pernicious principalities of the latter." Washington, D.C. was built from the ground up in Masonic symbolism, and this will be the topic of a future project. The French artist and urban planner Pierre-Charles L'Enfant was responsible for this. At the age of 22, he decided to go to the New World with the Marquis Marie-Joseph Lafayette. Lafayette was not just anyone. He was a French general, politician, enlightener, and above all, a member of the nobility.
Characters are
after the British colonies declared independence in 1776, Lafayette therefore went to America in 1777 against massive opposition from his family. With a volunteer force he had recruited himself to fight for American independence and his Enlightenment ideals of equality, freedom, and justice. As a general,
I think that's the cool thing about this whole thing, is that everybody's reached the same point, but all by opening the same doors, but we're not following behind one another. We're following Jesus. We're following God. We're following the Word of God. We don't go to YouTube and find videos about, specifically around the Baptist doctrine. We don't just delve off into that. We don't just look at only those and disregard all the others. We consider all information, no matter where it comes from or who it comes from. The point I'm trying to make with that is that what we have going on here is an event bigger than anything I've ever even encountered. And I've been through a lot of stuff. And I know a lot of people that have been through a lot of stuff. And this is bigger than that. It's bigger than all of that. Like I said in the very beginning, it does make me a little uncomfortable getting on this camera with these lights right here shining on me and talking to this camera. Seems that's who I'm talking to most of the time. But really, I'm talking to y'all. And I know that. I know that y'all may not all watch the whole thing that I post. You may not watch the full 2 hours each episode we come into this. You may watch bits and pieces, and you may just scroll on past it. But somebody's watching it. And because people are watching it, I want it to be understandable, relatable, and I want to be able to bring something fun and interesting for everybody. I know I talk kind of slow, and I'm gonna try to figure out what my little deal is and what I need to do to improve this whole thing, so that you can understand where I'm coming from a little better. I like where I'm at. I like where we're going with this thing. And like I said in the beginning, I don't feel just 100% comfortable doing this. I don't just enjoy it and love it beyond measure. I do like doing it. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's been fun so far. I mean, being able to interact with my friends and people that I talk to regularly, people that have inspired me along the way in this journey, and seeing their struggles and how they overcome them and battle through it through prayer and faith. It's amazing to me to see the growth in this community. And like my friend Tala said, we may be a small group of people. We may be a small group of people. But we're the last ones. After us, there is no more here for us to be worried about. And then we're moved on to another place. And that's the end goal. That's the end all to be all. Is that how that phrase goes? Either way, it's Friday, and I'm impressed with those that have hung out and stayed with us and watched me throughout this episode, and those that have managed to stay awake and not fall asleep. I appreciate your service and your time. If you guys will join me next week, we'll be going over the book of Jasher. I'm not going to finish the rest of this video with you guys because I don't believe that'd be fair to him. If you want to watch the rest of this and you want to watch it without me interrupting it every few seconds, go to chapter 20. It's 20 with 2 Y's at the end. Type that in, type in little timeline or deception or anything to that nature. It'll pull it right up. Go to his channel, watch him, like and subscribe to his stuff, man. We want to get people like that big. You want those guys to have the 70 and the 80 and the 100,000 followers. The JT follows JCs, the ones that are putting that information out there, the My Lunch Breaks. You want them to have a large following so that they don't have to work 8 hours a day earning someone else's way of life so that you can watch them in the evenings. It's all I'm saying is that the content they produce is amazing. Imagine if all they had was time to make this content and to do the things that they do. And I say that for all of us, and there's a way that we could all get to that point, even today and now. We would just have to rewrite a few things and move a few little rules and laws around. It's not that difficult to achieve success and peace if we all kind of come together and work together. That being said, I love you all. I appreciate your attendance, and I appreciate you guys' time, and thank you for being with me. And like I said, we'll get back on track with this Bible study first thing on Monday. I'll see you guys 9 p.m. to 11. Take care. Have a blessed weekend.
I'm back when a vision spins like a blade that sharpened car through the dark. Watch the target sound barking. Hearts full of scar, but the armor is hard. Never need a pardon, burn a bridge before I am walking. Words like a weapon, I ain't missing precision. I twist and lift them up out of their position. Vision sharper than a razor to your skin incision. No division, split them like a mission, like a nuclear fission. Ticking like a bomb, my mind is explosive pressure. What I thrive on, so keep me loaded. Unloaded pain in the page, I'm devoted. Rhymes wrapped in a braid, but the flow stay coated. I'm never looking back, no chains can hold me. Fire in my veins, my words stay boldly. Riding through the storm, I rise, you can fold me. When the pressure's on, only strength will mold me. Yeah, I keep pushing, never let them control me. Can't break what's broken, so you better get to know me. Lyrical assassin, slicing syllables fast. Got a heart full of lead, still the heat, it's a glass. People say I'm in a storm, but I already passed. While you stuck in the past, I'm racing hourglass. I spit sick, contagious, dangerous status. Pages turn, I'm burning, flipping through the ages. Outrageous, I break cages, no minimum wages. I'm the architect, building up lyrical mazes. No patience for fake ones, I leave them speechless. Every verse I rehearse, turning something egregious. Keep it seamless, genius, my wordplay's elitist. Venom in the flow, and I'm fighting like a species. I'm never looking back, no chains can hold me. Fire in my veins, my words stay boldly. Ride through the storm, I rise, you can pull me. When the pressure's on, only strength will mold me. I keep pushing, never let them control me. Can't break what's broken, so you better get to know me. I'm the outcast, misfit, misunderstood. But every time I spit, I remind them I'm good. They say it's too fast, but I rap like I should. Flows fluid as a river, I'm deep in the woods. I'm a phantom on the track, y'all can barely hear me. But when I drop the lines like a spear, so clearly flows eerie, every rhyme leaving the mind weary. Bars hit hard, full of fury, never cheery. I'm on the brink, you blink and you miss a whole plot. Might sink, but I'm ink, so the words don't stop. Feel the heat from my pen, you ain't ready for the drop. I'm the king of my craft, so respect the top spot. I'm never looking back, no chains can't hold me. Fire in my veins, my words stay boldly. Ride through the storm, I rise, you can pull me. When the pressure's on, only strength will mold me. I keep pushing, never let them control me.